Let's offer our respects to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay, so what did we see in the previous class?
Chapter 14.
Yes, chapter 14. What is the title of chapter 14?
The three modes of material nature.
Yes, exactly. The three modes of material nature. So what did we see?
We saw the Falashruti.
Yes, the Falashruti from the Gita Mahatmya. And then we saw Krishna beginning the chapter by glorifying the chapter. So Krishna says, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge. So Krishna is saying that the knowledge here is the best that he has explained so far. So you see in 9th chapter, it was titled the most confidential knowledge. Then in 10, he said that I'm going to declare to you which that is even better from before. And now he's saying that this is the best of all that he has given so far. So with Krishna, it is only getting better all the time, getting better than the best. And we discussed how when we know the glories of whatever we do, whether it is seva or any kind of fasting or chanting, whatever it is, when we know the reason why we should do it, then we can do it with even greater conviction. So when we don't know the glories of the holy name, for example, then we can chant better japa. So that's why Krishna, he not only gives us important knowledge, he also gives us the importance of the knowledge. Then in Shloka 3, he says that how he impregnates, and his impregnation makes birth the possible of all the living entities. So we see how the man has to impregnate the woman so that a child is born. But the Lord, he can impregnate with his vision. So Mahavishnu just glances at material nature, and that's how the living entities are transformed into the womb of material nature. And then Krishna said that he is the seed-giving father. Aham bija pradaha pita. He is the seed-giving father of all the living entities. Now here in Shloka 5, Krishna brings about this subject matter, the three modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then he goes on to explain the characteristics. So he says that the mode of goodness is illuminating and it frees one from sinful reactions. How does this bind? Even the mode of goodness binds the living entity. The mode of goodness binds by happiness and knowledge. Because the people in the mode of goodness are more or less free from sin, therefore there is a feeling of happiness that they have. And they have material knowledge. So therefore, they tend to become proud of their knowledge. So if one tries to preach to them, then they may say that we are comfortably placed, where they're happily placed, everything is well settled, financially sound, children well settled. So where is the need to take up spirituality? We are fine the way we are. And knowledge leads to pride. So we know everything. So there is, what is there to learn? So that's the binding factor for the people in the mode of goodness. Then mode of passion. In the mode of passion, there is unlimited desire and longing. They want more and more. There is a lot of hankering to obtain more and more material facilities. So therefore, they engage in fruitive actions. So it is this fruitive actions that binds the living entity to the material realm. Then mode of darkness binds one by madness, indolence, and sleep. Indolence means laziness. So they are lazy, they love to sleep, and they're also mad. Because they are in darkness, they are in ignorance, they have no knowledge. Therefore, they act according to whatever comes to their mind. They have no concern for rules and regulations. They don't, whatever, whether something is sanctioned or sanctioned, it doesn't concern them. Therefore, they act like mad people because they do whatever comes to the mind. So madness, indolence, and sleep binds the conditioned soul in the mode of ignorance. So 9 is a summary of the above 3 verses. Then in 10, Krishna explains how the modes compete with each other for supremacy. So sometimes a particular mode may be more prominent than the other modes. In 11, 12, and 13, Krishna is again discussing about how the mode of a goodness can be experienced when the gates of the body are illuminated. So we gave this example last time of how if there is a light at the gate, then we can control who comes in and who comes out, because we can see who's coming in and who's coming out. But if there is no light, if there is darkness, then we are not able to control who comes in and goes out of the gate. So here, the gates of the body, there are 9 gates of the human body. So they are illuminated by knowledge. So therefore, they know what to put into their system through their senses, and what to see and what not to see, what to eat, what not to eat, like that. They have control over what to put in and what not. In the mode of passion, there is attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, uncontrollable desire, and hankering. And the mode of ignorance, again, Krishna says, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. So in the mode of goodness, there is first reflection and then action, because they have knowledge. They first reflect, they think about it, they work things out, and then they act upon it. So there is first reflection and then action. In the mode of passion, there is action and then reflection. They may do something out of instinct, or they may blurt out something, say something inappropriate, and then they will regret it. So here, there is action and then there is reflection. And in the mode of ignorance, there is neither action nor reflection. Because they don't have knowledge, there is no reflection. And because they are lazy, there is no action. So therefore, people in the mode of goodness, they make things happen. People in the mode of passion, they watch things happen. And people in the mode of ignorance, they wonder what happened. Because there is reflection in the mode of goodness, they plan things out. Therefore, they can make things happen. Here in the mode of passion, because they are acting instinctively, and there is action and then reflection. So they watch things happen. They say something, or they may do something inappropriate, and then they see the consequences of it. What has happened? Like, oh, what did I just say? Like that. And mode of ignorance, they wonder what happened, because something goes wrong. They don't even realize why something has gone wrong, because they are in darkness, ignorance. So we stopped till verse 13 in the previous class. So chapter now in verse 14, verse 14 onwards, Krishna is going to talk about the long term, medium term, and the short term effects of the 3 modes of material nature. And he begins with the long term effects, where he talks about death in the mode of goodness, and then passion, and then ignorance. So we'll begin from verse number 13. Mehak, you have a question?
Mataji, can you please elaborate more on a mode of goodness, how you're telling that make things happen? people who are in this mode of goodness make things happen. So in the, like scientists who invent something, so they are in the mode, always in the mode of goodness.
No, it's not that. See, no living entity can always be in a particular mode, because remember, the modes are competing with each other. So mostly, you can say most of the time, or for compared to the other modes, they are in the mode of goodness. A person who has knowledge and is happy. Now, we don't know if scientists, because again, it's an individual case. We don't know if the scientists are living a life more or less free of sin. That we don't know. If he's living a life free of sin, then he can be said to be in the mode of goodness. That is one of the characteristics. So make
Okay.
things happen means, because they first contemplate, they analyze, and then they act upon it. So therefore they can make things happen. It's like, if somebody is investing, and if you think where to invest, you analyze the market and then you invest your money, then you can more or less say that, okay, I have taken a calculated risk. Risk is always there, but one takes a calculated risk, so they can make things happen. But if somebody is passionate, just goes and does what comes to his mind, so then he will watch things happen. Okay, I already did this out of instinct, and now I'm going to watch things happen. But somebody in the mode of ignorance, he just wonders, oh, ye kya hua? What happened? Like that. So whether one contemplates, whether there is reflection before the action, that's what determines if one is in the mode of goodness or passion.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So who would like to read today?
Mataji, can I read Bhagavad Gita from Bhagavad Gita, the verse under the verse, the translation? And somebody else can read this.
You would like to read the translation, Mataji? Did you say that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we need somebody to read the other text, please. Who can read?
Can I read, Mataji?
Yes, of course. Thank you, both of you. Both the sisters, transcendental sisters. Okay,
you.
but before we begin, please repeat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Please read this.
Section 3, 14.10 to 14.13, recognizing a mode's supremacy, identifying the modes dominating us by their principle.
Oh, one second. I'm sorry, we are on the wrong screen. 1 second. Sorry. Here, this one.
Okay. 14.14 to 14.18, acting and dying within the modes, effect of coordinating by the modes. 14 to 15, long-term effect, post-death destination. 16, medium-term effect. 17, immediate effect. 18, direction of post-death journey. Both the results of one's action and the results after one's death are predominant by a specific mode of nature, and though brings about certain results.
Okay, let's see the shloka.
यदा सत्त्वे प्रवृद्धे तु प्रलयं याति देहभृन् तदोत्तमविदां लोकान् अमलान् प्रतिपद्यते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada began, when one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages. Hare Krishna.
So we are discussing the long-term, Krishna is discussing the long-term effects, and he tells that if one dies in the mode of goodness, then what's the destination of such a person? He goes to the higher planets of the great sages. So above the heavenly planets, above Swarga Loka are the planets of the great sages, and the highest planet is that of Brahma Loka. So this is the destination of somebody who dies in the mode of goodness. Because sages, if they are, because we have sages, brahmanas, devotees, Vaishnavas. So Vaishnava is both a Brahman and a devotee, but not necessarily that all the Brahmanas are Vaishnavas. So if one is in the mode of goodness, he is leading a sin-free life. and he has knowledge, then he's supposed to be in the mode of goodness, but not necessarily in the transcendental mode of goodness. So he goes to the heavenly planets. Here you have a picture of Swargaloka, or the planets of the sages. So this is where a person goes. So what happens if one dies in the mode of passion and ignorance? Let's see.
रजसि प्रलयं गत्वा कर्मसङ्गिषु जायते तथा प्रलीनस्तमसि मूढयोनिषु जायते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities, and when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. Hare Krishna.
So dying in the mode of passion takes one to the earthly planets where we are situated, because here most of the people, most of the population are engaged in fruitive activities. No mode of passion, going to work, wanting to make it big, wanting to be successful, wanting to be famous, wanting to be seen in the society, wanting to have a certain standard of living. So more or less, by and large, we saw Srila Prabhupada's quote in the previous class also, how he said that most of the current civilization is situated in the mode of passion. So if one dies in the mode of passion, then it takes birth amongst those who are engaged in fruitive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, then muda yonishu. Muda yonishu. Muda means foolish, and animals have less intelligence. So they are called as muda yonishu. So they take birth in the animal kingdom. Let's read this.
Some people have the impression that when the soul reaches the platform of human life, it never goes down again. This is incorrect. According to this verse, if one develops the mode of ignorance, after his death he is degraded to the animal form of life. From there, one has to again elevate himself by the inward evolutionary process to come again to the human form of life.
So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport how it's incorrect to think that after human birth, then that's it. One has reached the epitome and then one can go back to the spiritual realm. Yes, human birth is the platform from which we go to the spiritual realm. But if we misuse the human body, then we can fall down again into animal species. So this is a misconception to think that after human birth, then no more animal birth. Okay, and what is the evidence? Because Krishna himself says that if one dies in the mode of ignorance, then he takes birth in the animal kingdom. So yes, we can go back to the animal species after human species if we misuse this human body. And
Mataji, can I
again,
ask one
how are we
question?
going to? Yes.
So can you give an example of more, like how would one die in mode of ignorance? What
How
would be
would
an
one
example?
die in the mode of ignorance? How would one
Yeah.
die in the mode of ignorance? A person in the mode of ignorance is characterized by indolence and sleep and ignorance. So he has no shastric knowledge. He loves to sleep. He is not aware of what is the goal of human life. Yes, and he's very lazy. So that doesn't mean that if, see, somebody in slot one asked me if somebody dies in the sleep, then that does it mean that he has died in the mode of ignorance? We are talking about the consciousness of a person. Okay, if the consciousness of the person is the mode of ignorance, then that means that death has happened in the mode of ignorance.
Those four pillars, Mataji, those four pillars that Prabhupada has stood up for us to follow, if we break all four of them, then we would die in the mode of ignorance, right?
Yes, definitely. That is sinful life. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I think that would be another answer for her to comprehend too.
Yes. So if one is not following the rules and regulations, if one is leading a sinful life, he doesn't know what is right or wrong. And of course, the four principles, those four principles bring us to the human standard only. If we are not engaged in meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex and gambling, then we are only at the standard of being a human being, because as a human being, we are supposed to follow these principles. So below that, it's animalistic only. So mode of ignorance.
Okay, thank you, Mataji.
Okay, you're welcome. So once we go to this animal species, how are we again going to come to the human form of life? Only through the evolutionary process. Then we have to go from one species to another species until again we reach the human birth. So which is going to be several lifetimes. Again, there are 8,400,000 different kinds of bodies available. 16.
कर्मणः सुकृतस्याहुः सात्विकं निर्मलं फलं रजसस्तु फलं दुःखम् अज्ञानं तमसः फलम्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness, but action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. Hare Krishna.
So here Krishna is explaining the medium term effect. What is the medium term effect? What are the results of each of these three modes? Result of pious action is purity. The result of passion is misery. And result of ignorance is foolishness. See, especially for us, we should remember this. Rajasas tu phalam dukkham. Mode of passion results in misery. No matter how much we try, to be successful, to have a nice living, earn a lot of money, because mostly, as we discussed, the population is the mode of passion, but rajasas tu phalam dukham. It will only bring us misery at the end of the day. Why? Because time and again, we already know, especially our experience with lust, no, we know that we have been let down life after life after life. Lust has never satisfied us. We think, because lust is the greatest pleasure giving what do you call it, activity for most humans. They think like that, so they try to satisfy their lust in so many ways. Maybe change their partner, change the style, change the activity, but very soon we realize that no matter what we change, still it does not satisfy us. It only burns more and more like fire. So rajasas tu phalam dukham, it can only bring misery. And Srila Prabhupada comments about how animal eating is in the mode of ignorance, is the grossest form of ignorance, Srila Prabhupada says. So one may think that, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat meat, but I cook, or maybe I distribute, or maybe I'm involved in the selling, or in my business, I sell meat. So I'm a vegetarian, but I don't eat. Well, we learn from the Manusmriti, and Srila Prabhupada explains this in the purport of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that how not only the one who eats, but the one who kills, the one who gives permission, one who sells, one who cooks, one who distributes the food stuff, and finally one who eats. All these are equally liable, equally sinful for the killing of that animal. So the karma for meat eating is divided equally amongst all these categories of people. It's not that if I'm a vegetarian but I'm cooking for someone, then I'm equally responsible and I have to take the karma for that meat eating. So just let's read this part which is in the orange, which is from Srimad Bhagavatam.
According to Manu, the great author of civic codes and religious principles, even the killer of an animal is to be considered a murderer, because animal food is never meant for the civilized man, whose prime duty is to prepare himself for going back to Godhead. He says that in the act of killing an animal, there is a regular conspiracy by the party of sinners, and all of them are liable to be punished as murderers, exactly like a party of conspirators who kill a human being combinedly. He who gives permission, he who kills the animal, he who sells the slaughtered animal, he who cooks the animal, he who administers distribute of the foodstuff, and at last he who eats such cooked animal food are all murderers, and all of them are liable to be punished by the law of nature.
Okay.
सत्त्वात् सञ्जायते ज्ञानं रजसो लोभ एव च प्रमादमोहौ तमसो भवतो ज्ञानमेव च.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance develops foolishness, madness, and illusion. Hare Krishna.
So here Krishna is talking about the short-term effects or the immediate effects of the three modes. From the mode of goodness, knowledge develops, mode of passion, greed develops, and mode of ignorance develops, foolishness, madness, and illusion. Now, Shloka 17 here. Now we have Shloka 17 and Shloka 16. In 16, Krishna describes the results of the action, and Shloka 17 explains the cause of the results which are mentioned in verse 16. Let us read from action and goodness, the second half of the page, to understand this.
Action and goodness brings knowledge, which therefore brings proper action, resulting in purity. Action is passion, brings unlimited desires and insatiable greed, and therefore results in misery. Action is ignorance, brings madness and illusion, which causes one to act foolishly.
So like this, verse 17 explains the cause of the results given in verse 16. Okay, let's go to 18.
ऊर्ध्वं गच्छन्ति सत्त्वस्था मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजसाः जघन्यगुणवृत्तिस्था अधो गच्छन्ति तामसाः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said, those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish world. Hare
So
Krishna.
where do they go? Where do these people go in the different modes? Mode of goodness, they go to the higher planets. Mode of passion, earthly planets, and mode of ignorance, hellish worlds. So ultimately, one has to transcend even the mode of goodness and attain the transcendental mode of goodness. One has to go beyond even the material realm. Mode of goodness is the best platform from where we can go to the transcendental mode. But at the end of the day, we have to transcend it. If we don't transcend it, then still, although we are in the higher planets, still we are within the 14 planetary system. Still we are within the material world. So Srila Prabhupada explains that whether if one is tied up, one has to try and let himself free. Whether you are tied up with a golden chain or a silver chain or an iron chain, what does it matter? At the end of the day, you are tied up, right? So mode of goodness is like a golden chain. Yes, it's a golden chain, but at the end of the day, we are still tied up and we have to get out of it. Okay, let's go to the next section where Krishna is going to explain how we are going to transcend the mode. So Krishna is not only presenting us the problem, he's also giving us the solution to the problem. So how can we transcend it? Krishna explains in this next section.
नान्यं गुणेभ्यः कर्तारं यदा द्रष्टानुपश्यति गुणेभ्यश्च परं वेत्ति मद्भावं सोऽधिगच्छति.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said, when one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all three modes, he attains my spiritual nature. Hare Krishna.
So what Krishna is saying, he's saying that he is transcendental to these modes, even though it may appear when Krishna was on this planet that Krishna, it appears like he's in a material body, but he is not in a material body. His body is still spiritual. He is always transcendental. So because he is transcendental, because Krishna is transcendental, if we take the shelter of Krishna, then we can cross over these three modes. Then we can also attain Krishna's spiritual nature. We can also become Satchit Ananda, qualitatively the same as Krishna. So how to cross over these three modes? By taking the shelter of that person who is already transcendental to these modes, which is Krishna.
Mataji, you will share the plate before this that you showed that everything that's happening is, yeah, the first one, all within this world takes place under the modes. You will share this plate in the group?
Yes, yes. We will
Okay.
share all this in the group.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, 20.
गुणानेतानतीत्यत्रीं देहि देहसमुद्भवान् जन्म मृत्युजरा दुःखैर्विमुक्तोऽमृतमश्नुते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna is saying that we can overcome distress, we can overcome birth, death, old age, distress, and enjoy nectar when even in this life. So not necessary that we have to go to the spiritual world to enjoy nectar. We can enjoy nectar even in this life. How? Because Krishna is full of bliss. Therefore, when we serve him, when we associate with him, when we follow his instructions, we please him, then we can also be full of joy. So we can enjoy nectar even in this lifetime. For a pure devotee, it does not matter whether he's serving the Lord in the spiritual world or he's serving the Lord in the material world. All that a devotee wants is he wants to serve the Lord. Once he serves the Lord, then he doesn't. He feels joy. Of course, there is death, there is old age, there is disease, but he does not feel he doesn't feel morose, he does not feel the effects of it like an ordinary person may feel. He always feels happy and joyful irrespective of what physically distress he may be going through. So such a person can enjoy nectar even in this life. And this is the reason why every person who walks the planet, we cannot put everybody under the same category. Especially we receive this question a lot: why should I surrender to a guru, or why should I follow any acharya? Why should I follow what Vyasadev has written? Because even they are human beings like us. No, they may be externally human beings, but there is a lot of difference in the consciousness of a person. So one may be in a transcendental mode even when he is in this material realm. And this is the reason why we should surrender to such great personalities. That is why we should surrender to Guru. We should surrender to the bona fide representative of Krishna. And that's why we accept as Shastra what is written by great personalities like Vyasadeva. Just because externally they are a human being doesn't mean that they are equal to us. Yes, even though they are walking this planet, even though they are in the material realm, it's still, it doesn't mean that they are in the materialistic mode of life. Okay, 21.
अर्जुन उवाच कैर्लिङ्गैस्त्रीन् गुणानेतान् अतीतो भवति प्रभो किमाचारः कथं चैतान् त्रीन् गुणान् अतिवर्तते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjun inquired, "O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the modes of nature?" Hare Krishna.
So now Arjuna wants to know, he's asking three questions. He wants to know what are the symptoms, by what symptoms one is known who has transcended. So how do we know that somebody has transcended, or how do we know if we have transcended these three modes? What are the symptoms? What is the behavior of such a person? And how does this person transcend the modes of nature? So Arjuna is asking three questions and Krishna is going to answer them immediately.
श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रकाशं च प्रवृत्तिं च मोहमेव च पाण्डव न द्वेष्टि सम्प्रवृत्तानि न निवृत्तानि काङ्क्षति उदासीनवदासीनो गुणैर्यो न विचाल्यते गुणा वर्तन्त इत्येवं योऽवतिष्ठति नेङ्गते समदुःखसुखः स्वस्थः समलोष्टाश्मकाञ्चनः तुल्यप्रिया प्रियो धीरः तुल्यनिन्दात्मसंस्तुतिः मानापमानयो तुल्यः तुल्यो मित्रारिपक्षयोः सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी गुणातीतः स उच्यते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The blessed Lord said, "He who does not hate elimination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, nor longs for them when they disappear, who is seated like one unconcerned, being situated beyond these material reactions of the modes of nature, who refrains from knowing that the modes alone are active, one regards alike pleasure and pain, and looks on a clod, uh, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is wise and holds praise and blame to be the same. Praises to be the same, blame to be the same, who is unchanged in honor and dishonor, who treats friends and foes alike, who has abandoned all furtive undertakings, such as a man is said to have transcendented the modes of nature. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I think you're reading another version because what we have on the screen is different.
Oh,
Are
I'm
you
sorry.
reading?
The screen version was so small that I couldn't see. So I read from Bhagavad Gita. So I read
Okay.
from Bhagavad Gita, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal towards the desirable and undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcendental modes of nature. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so here Krishna is answering the first two questions of Arjuna. See, 22 to 25 are here. In 22, he is answering Arjuna's first question, which is what are the symptoms by which one can identify if he has transcended the modes. And then 23, 24, 25, he answers Arjuna's second question about what is the behavior of such a person, or how are the dealings of such a person. So with regard to the symptoms, Krishna explains that how a person, as long as he is in the material body, if he does not desire to enjoy the body, neither does he desire to get out of the body. He has none of these desires. His desire is just that I want to serve the Lord. So he is neutral and he just engages in devotional service. So automatically he forgets his identity with the material body. This is the symptom of somebody who has transcended the modes of material nature. Now, what are the dealings of such a person? Krishna explains that such a person, he is situated in the self, and whether in happiness and distress. He looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, or piece of gold with an equal eye. So he is not looking at gold as a valuable metal. For him, anything is of value only if he can use it in the service of the Lord. If it cannot be used in the service of our Lord, then it is valueless. Then he is equal to the desirable and the undesirable. He is situated equally in praise and blame, honor and dishonor. He treats alike both friends and enemies. Anybody who can help him in his Krishna consciousness is a friend for him. And he has no so-called enemies, right? So such a person, then one can identify that, okay, such a person has transcended the mode of material nature. It looks very similar, right? The first and the second questions. But what is the difference? What is the difference? Because when Arjuna asks about the symptoms, then they are self-perceived, that it's for me to analyze myself, right? Self-perceived. And behavior of a person is for somebody else to analyze. By seeing the qualities, then somebody else can analyze this person. Okay, so this person is equal in honor and dishonor. He's friendly with everyone. He has no enemies. So like that, then these are perceived by the others. This is the difference between the two. And here in 26, Krishna answers Arjuna's third question: how one transcends.
मां च यो व्यभिचारेण भक्तियोगेन सेवते सगुणान् समतीत्यैतान् ब्रह्म भूयाय कल्पते.
Hare Krishna. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One who engages in full devotional service unfailing in all circumstances at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahma. Hare Krishna.
So Arjuna's third question was how one transcends the modes of material nature. So Krishna answers that you can transcend it by engaging in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. Unfailing in all circumstances. So Maya tests us. Till the point of death, Maya does not give up. She is going to try and try and try because she does her service to perfection. But we have to unfailingly engage in devotional service in all circumstances. This is the reason why for those who begin Krishna consciousness, the gurus and anybody who's preaching, they recommend that you fix a minimum number and you chant that much. But every day you chant that much. Now, how much is that minimum that we are going to begin with? That varies from person to person because each one of us has a different body, right? We don't know. So until we can increase our spiritual strength and come to the level of 16, it's important to fix a minimum number and then increase our stamina, our spiritual stamina, and come to minimum of 16 rounds. So just as how, let's say, if one wants to build muscles and his capacity to lift weights is 10 kilos, but if he's going to go to the gym and work out and lift only 2 kilo weights, it's not going to help him build the muscles. But if he tries to lift weights of 11 kilos, a little more than his capacity, then he can build muscles. But if he's going to say, okay, I want to lift 20 kilos or 25 kilos, then he's not going to able to sustain it. He's going to just crash, isn't it? So if we are going to make an unreasonable target beyond beyond the vehicle that we have. See, the body is compared to our vehicle, right? And each vehicle has a different pickup. We have different starting points depending on where we left off in the previous lifetime. So somebody, one vehicle may have a fast pickup like a racer car, and another car may have a slower pickup. So not all bodies are the same, not all vehicles are the same. So we have to see, right? First, what is important is self-analysis. Okay, and we set a reasonable target. Okay, tomorrow onwards, I will get up if I cannot get up at 3 o'clock for Mangalarti, 4 o'clock for Mangalarti, then at least, okay, at what time can I get up? And then I stick to that consistently. And then when I continue that for unfailingly for a certain period of time, I increase my spiritual stamina and then I can better my own record. This is how we work ourselves to the higher level. So Krishna says, unfailingly in all circumstances, one who engages in full devotional service, then one can transcend the modes of material nature and come to the level of Brahman. So Brahman realization is the first stage of realizing the absolute, isn't it? So he says you can come to the spiritual level. See, there's a very nice verse from the Bhagavatam, which explains that this material world, this cosmic manifestation is like an ocean. Now, it's not easy to cross an ocean. Even a very expert swimmer may find it difficult to swim across an entire ocean, isn't it? But when we engage in devotional service, then the water of the ocean becomes so small, it becomes like the water that is contained in the hoof print of a calf. Now, a calf's hoof print is so small, and how much water can one hold in that hoof print? So the water of the ocean is reduced to the water that is held in the hoof print of a calf, which can be crossed very easily without any effort, even by a small child. So this is the effect of one who can engage in devotional service. Let us read this translation.
Hare Krishna. Should I read?
Yes, please.
Oh, for those who have accepted the abode of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, is famous in as Murari, the enemy of the Maru demon. The ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoof print. Their goal is Pararam, Param Padam Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So let's go to the last shloka of this chapter.
ब्रह्मणो हि प्रतिष्ठाहम् अमृतस्याव्ययस्य च शाश्वतस्य च धर्मस्य सुखस्यैकान्तिकस्य च ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे गुणत्रयविभागयोगो नाम चतुर्दशोऽध्यायः।
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahma, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of the ultimate happiness. Hare Krishna.
So previously, Krishna said in 26 that by engaging in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, then one can come to the level of Brahman. And here in 27, Krishna is saying, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, because Krishna is Para Brahman. So, and eventually Krishna, of course, he's ending the chapter again by stressing on devotional service, on bhakti. He says by doing bhakti, I mean, he says that even to come to the level of Brahman realization, even for that, you need bhakti, you need devotional service. So on that note, he ends this chapter. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport.
Shall I read, Mataji?
Yes, please.
When a living entity conditioned by this material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahma conception of the Supreme. This attainment of Brahman conception of life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position. But he is not actually perfect in Brahman realization. If he wants, he can continue to stay in the Brahma's position and then gradually rises up to the Paramatma realization and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of God. Srila Prabhupada purport 14.27 Hare Krishna.
Okay, let's see the verse by verse chapter overview.
Verses 1 to 2 in the beginning of the chapter, Krishna declares to Arjuna that he will now again reveal the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, by understanding which one can attain to the transcendental nature and be freed from the repetition of birth. In that verses 3 to 4, Krishna first explains that all living beings take birth within this material world when he injects them into the material nature. He is therefore the seed giver, father of all the different species of life in the material world. Verse 5, material nature consists of three modes: sattvic, goodness; rajas, passion; and tamas, ignorance. Those modes conditioned the living entity who takes birth in the material world. Verses 6 to 18, Krishna defines and explains the general characteristics and symptoms of the modes of how they conditioned and bind the jiva, and he describes the fate of differently conditioned jivas after that. But verse 19, one can transcend the influence of the three modes and attain Krishna by understanding the working of the modes and understanding that Krishna is transcendental to them. Verse 20, when one transcends the modes, he attains freedom from distress of birth, old age, and death, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. Verse 21, Arjuna next asks Krishna three questions. What are the symptoms or one who is transcendental to the modes of nature? What is his behavior and how does he transcend the modes? Verses 22 to 25, Krishna answers the first two questions. In essence, a person who has transcended the modes of nature, having realized his own self to be spiritual and transcendental to matter, is unconcerned with the unaffected by is unconcerned with and unaffected by the action and reaction of the material world. He is freed from all material dualities such as pleasure and pain, honor and dishonor, and he does not engage in any fruitive actions. Hare Krishna. This last one, the last sentence is so nice. If we can achieve this, then we'll be happy.
Yes, of course.
Honors, okay. Verse 26. In answer to Arjun's third question, Krishna says that one transcends the mode by performing bhakti yoga, devotional service, and when one transcends the mode, he attains to the level of Brahman, the primary spiritual position characterized by freedom from material contamination. Verse 27. In the final verse of the chapter, Krishna declares that he is the basis of or source of Brahman. Therefore, when one has attained the level of Brahman, etc., freedom from the contamination of the modes of nature, he becomes qualified to engage in devotional service of Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahma, Krishna.
So with that, we come to the end of chapter number 14 by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.
Jai.
This last sentence that I read, that they're engaging in transcendental work, and because they have came across that bridge, the three modes, right? So that's the reason that they're engaging in the Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So basically, if we see somebody engaging in Krishna consciousness, that means that they're divine and in peace.
Yeah, so there are two aspects of the coin. See, when one engages in devotional service initially, it's not necessary that he has already detached himself. See, the attachment to Krishna and detachment from the material world, they are two aspects of the same coin. So when we, of course, Srila Prabhupada always stressed on just chant Hare Krishna, engage in devotional service. The anartha nivriti, the unwanted material attachment will go off as a byproduct of engaging in devotional service. But when we start off our devotional service, it's one has not necessarily overcome material attachments because he's not yet reached the stage of pure devotional service. So that depends on which stage one is in.
But Mataji, like you give classes of Bhagavad Gita and Prabhupada Leelamrit, so that means you're transcendental, right? Because you give classes, so we learn from you. So that means the thought pattern and the teachings that you give us are so transcendental and they're internal, and they give us peace, right?
Yeah, but I'm only repeating the words from Guru and the disciplic succession, right? I may be imperfect. I may have so many imperfections, but the knowledge is perfect because I'm only repeating what is spoken by the previous acharyas. So
But
the
but
speaker may have
Prabhupada
100 faults.
Prabhupada did the same thing. He repeated his Guru's words, right, and the Shastra words.
Yeah, but Prabhupada, of course, he is completely transcendental. He is not, there is no comparison at all. Srila Prabhupada is completely transcendental, no doubt about it.
Okay.
Mataji, the verse 25 of chapter 14 is similar to 18 and 19 verses of chapter 12, right? Because in this he tells the actions of in the mode of devotional service, like above the mode of goodness.
Okay, let's go
And
there.
there
One
and
second,
then
let's go.
also Krishna tells that the one is which one? Tulya Ninda Stutir Mauni Santushto Yena Kenachit Aniketa Sthira Matir Bhaktiman Me Priyo Nara.
Which verse is that?
18-19 of chapter 12.
Ah, yes, yes. Yes, here you have equipoise and honor, dishonor. Correct. Yeah, it's similar.
Similar, right? And here it is that such a person is dear to me.
Yes, such a person is very dear to me. Correct. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good thinking, Mahek. Very nice. Okay, are we ready for chapter 15?
Yes, Mataji, we're
Yes,
all ready for chapter 15.
the slot
But
one, the,
chapter 14
the
was so
slot one also started.
Sorry?
The slot one.
Slot 1 also we did chapter 15 today.
So we should also comment then.
Yes, yes. Okay, so chapter 15 is the shortest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita along with chapter 12. Both 12 and 15 have 20 verses each. But before we, and this chapter is titled The Yoga of the Supreme Person or Purushottam Yoga. Krishna established himself as Parabrahman. So now he's going to talk about establish himself as Purushottam or the Purusha Uttama, the topmost person. But before we begin the chapter, we have to understand why we read this chapter. So this is glorification of chapter 15 from the Gita Mahatmya, which is a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati. And Lord Shiva is explaining to Goddess Parvati. He tells her that in a place called Gauda Desh, there was a king called Nirsingha. He was very powerful. In fact, he was so powerful that he could defeat even the demigods. He has a commander-in-chief, and the commander-in-chief of his army is called Sarab Merun. Now, this person, Sarab Merun, he is very greedy, and he plots to kill the king along with the prince in order to become the ruler of the kingdom. But he dies of cholera before he could execute his plan. Now, of course, he was very greedy and he plotted to kill, etc. So he takes his next birth in the animal kingdom. He is born as a horse, but he also had some good karma, some merits also in his karmic bank balance. So as a horse, he's not an ordinary horse. He's a very well sought after horse. He was very beautiful and he could run very fast. So many people wanted to have this horse. Now, a rich man of Gauda Desh, the same country where he was a commander-in-chief in his previous lifetime. So a rich man from Gauda Desh, he sees this horse and he buys this horse and he takes this horse to the king, Nirsingha, with the intention of selling this horse to the king. Now the king examines the horse and he says that yes, this horse is of highest quality, and he gives him whatever price he asks for. The king just gives him for that horse. Now the king one day goes hunting and he's riding on this particular horse. And as he follows a deer, he goes deep into the forest. And his party, his other people with whom he had gone out hunting, they are left behind, and the king has gone deep into the forest. He's tired and thirsty, so he decides to take rest under a tree. And he ties this horse to a tree, and he himself, he sits on a large rock nearby. Now, while he's sitting there, he sees a piece of parchment. What is a parchment? Parchment is a small piece of animal skin, which was used as a writing surface in the previous ages. So he sees a piece of parchment and he sees that something is written here, and he starts to read that. Can you guess what was written on the parchment?
Chapter 15.
Chapter 15. So can the entire chapter be written on a parchment, small piece of animal skin?
All the title of chapter 15.
Title of chapter 15. Okay. Anybody else wants to take a guess?
Can you give us a little hint? I can guess, but that guess will be very comedy.
I'll give you I'll give you the answer, because I don't know what kind of guess to give. So anyway, half a shloka from chapter 15 is written on that parchment. Okay. So he starts to read, the king starts to read what is written on the parchment, which is half a shloka of chapter 15. And as soon as the first words come out of his mouth, the horse collapses on the ground. He attains a 4-armed form. He sat on a flower airplane that takes him to Vaikuntha. Now the king is surprised and he's like, what just happened? And then he observes and he sees that around him there is actually an ashram, which is surrounded by fruit trees. And in that ashram, a Brahmana was sitting, and this Brahmana had complete control over his senses. So the king very respectfully, he approaches the Brahmana and he inquires from him. And he asks him, how is it possible that a horse could attain Vaikuntha? The Brahmana says that this person actually was the commander-in-chief of your army in the previous lifetime, and his name was Sarab Merun. This Brahmana's name is Vishnu Sharma. Okay, so Vishnu Sharma tells him that, and he had plotted to kill you along with the prince, but he died of cholera before he could execute his plan. And by chance, he heard from your mouth some words of chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, and therefore he has attained Vaikuntha. Now the king returns to his capital, and again he reads what is written on that parchment. And after some time, he installs his son as the king of Gaudadesh, and he himself goes off to the forest where he regularly recited the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and very quickly attained the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So this is the glorification of chapter 15 by Lord Shiva. Now, what is the connection between chapter 14 and 15? Let's read.
Connection. Okay. At the end of chapter 14, Krishna describes that one transcends the modes through devotional service. The basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter, purport 15.1. Hare Krishna.
So this is exactly what we were discussing. As Srila Prabhupada also explained the purport that it has two aspects. Devotional service has two aspects. One is detachment and the other is attachment. Attachment to the lotus feet of Krishna and detachment from material sense gratification. He also writes about this in the introduction of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's read this.
A pure devotional service must be freed from all desires for sense gratification, fruitive aspirations, and culture of monastic knowledge. One must be freed from all kinds of designations, and when one is thus converted to transcendental purity, one can then serve the Lord by purified senses. As long as there is the desire to enjoy sensually or to become one with the Supreme or to possess the mystic powers, there is no question of attaining this stage of pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam introduction. Hare Krishna.
So Srila Prabhupada explains that how at the stage of pure devotional service, there is no question of still being attached to material sense enjoyment. As long as we are still attached to enjoying our senses materially, to that extent, our devotional service is not pure. So how we can detach ourselves, that is what Krishna is going to explain in this chapter. Let's read this.
Krishna begins chapter 15 by explaining the need for detachment with a metaphor that compares the material world to an avastha, a banana tree, and
Banyan tree.
a banyan tree, and describes the full material world with its varieties of fields and fruits. Then Krishna describes Purushottama Yoga in text 15.6-15.20. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna begins this chapter by giving us an analogy, and the analogy in this analogy he describes a banyan tree. Now a banyan tree has branches that go till the ground, so it gives the appearance of it having aerial roots, right? The roots are growing upward. So he uses this banyan tree to explain material, our attachment in the material world, and the material world is indicated by a banyan tree, but it is upside down. It's an upside down banyan tree. Anyway, we will see this as we proceed. This chapter is divided into 5 sections. And initial shlokas, he talks about this analogy. So let's hear the shloka.
अथ पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच ऊर्ध्वमूलमधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित्
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns, and one who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna says that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down. Because this banyan tree, see here, the banyan tree has branches that go till the ground. It gives the impression of having aerial roots. So he says that there is an upside down banyan tree with its roots upward. Now the entanglement of the material world is compared to a banyan tree. So you can see how that this is very complex. If you're stuck in these branches, it's not so easy to come out of it. So he says, Krishna compares the entanglement in the material world to this banyan tree. And he says that there is no end to this banyan tree. So one is wandering from one branch to the other branch. The branches here represent the different planetary systems. One is going from higher to lower, or from lower to higher. One is going from one branch to the other branches. The higher branches represent the heavenly planets. The middle branches represent the earthly planets, and the lower branches represent the lower planetary systems, or the hellish planets. And because this tree, this banyan tree, or the tree of material entanglement, is an inverted tree. Where do you find an inverted tree? An inverted tree you can only see in the reflection of a real tree, because otherwise you cannot see an inverted tree anywhere. So you can see in this analogy, the original tree is up, then there is a river, and the reflection of the tree is in the water, and that is inverted. So material existence is also like the shadow. It is an illusion. Illusion means it's not that it does not exist. It does exist. The shadow really exists, right? But it is an illusion. For example, if we are watching a movie, now we go through so many different emotions. We may be crying, we may laugh when we watch the movie. We are going through different emotions, but at the same time, we are aware that actually this hero is not being beaten up. Or actually, there is no separation of the boy and the girl, which is causing us distress, which is making us cry. Yes, but we are going through the emotions, and we know that they are only actors. It's not that really that thing is happening. So, like that, the material world is an illusion. We are going through experiences here, but the fact that the movie exists is a reality that is there in reality. So, in the same way, this material world does exist in reality, but it is an illusion. Okay, so in this inverted tree, this river here represents material desires. If there is no river, there would be no shadow. Yes, there would be no reflection of the tree in the river. So in the same way, if there are no desires, if one does not have material desires, then there would be no material world. This material world exists because we desire to enjoy independently, right? So this river represents the desires. Now the roots are up in this inverted tree, the roots are up and the branches are down. So our material existence begins from the highest planet, which is the highest planet in the material world, Brahmaloka. So our material journey begins from Brahmaloka. All of us have received the body of Lord Brahma when we came to the material realm. So all of us have been Brahma once at least in our lifetime. Let's read this text. What happened to Shivani? Shivani, we have lost her. Is she there?
I'm here, Mataji.
You're
I'm
not
here.
reading, Mataji. What happened?
No, because she was reading, so I was quiet.
But she didn't say anything. She's just like a little shy little doll.
Okay, so
That's okay,
Shivani,
I'll read.
you want to read?
Sure. The
Okay.
entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no need to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end, and for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. Bhagavad Gita 15.1 purport. The Vedic rhymes meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. The tree's roots grow upward because they began from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree illusion, then one can get out of it. Bhagavad Gita 15.1 purport.
Okay. So let's read this.
Text 15.1 theme. Material world is an upside down banyan tree. One who knows this tree is a true knower of the Vedas. This is explained in the purport as follows. After discussing Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about Vedas? Chapter 15 describes the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness engaged in the devotional service already knows the Vedas.
So see here, because Krishna says, one who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. That's why we have this, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, but what about one may ask, what about the Vedas? So Krishna says that if you can understand this tree, then you already know the Vedas. Why? Because the Vedas, what is the goal of the Vedas? Ultimately, it's to know Krishna. If we know Krishna, then we understand that we are the servants of the Lord. So if one is engaging in devotional service, then it means you already know the Vedas by default. So let's see the analogy of the tree here. Let's read this.
The real tree, spiritual world, the shadow of the tree, material world, river, material desires, roots are material existent, branches, various planetary systems, upper and lower planets, the fruits, results of the living entities' activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Leaves are Vedic hymns. One who is attracted by rituals, Vedic formulas, is just attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the banyan tree and does not know the purpose of Veda. Hare Krishna.
So we've already discussed how the real tree is a spiritual world and the shadow of the tree is a material world. The river represents material desires. The roots are our material existence. So the roots are upward. So our existence begins from Brahma Loka. We already also discussed how the branches are the various planetary systems. So see here, impious acts. If we commit sinful activities, then we go down. And if we commit pious activities, then we can climb up higher the branches and we can go to the higher planetary systems and ultimately go beyond this material realm. The fruits, the results of the living act. So these fruits are religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So these are the results of the activities of the living entities. As the living entities work, and then there is dharma, material religiosity, because the initial stages, the initial section of the Vedas tell us how we can engage in sense gratification and economic development under the shelter of Shastra so that it is not sinful. Yes. So there we have dharma, artha, kama, and moksha is towards the end only. The Vedas talk about moksha, liberation, that is higher up over here. So these are the fruits of the activities of the living entities. The leaves are compared to the Vedic hymns. So one may get distracted by the lush green leaves, which are so many numerous in number. They are compared to the Vedas. But remember, we have discussed that one should not get carried away by the flowery words of the Vedas, initial section, because the Vedas tell us how we can enjoy sense gratification, but under the shelter of the Shastra. But don't get carried away. So therefore, these don't get distracted by these leaves, according to this analogy. Let's read this.
The tree's roots grow upward because they began from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of the universe, purport 15.1. This means that the Jiva begins his material journey as Brahma. Srimad Bhagavatam 9.24.58. Both the Lord and the living entity begin Qualitativity, spirit, soul have the tendency for peaceful enjoyment. But when the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead unfortunately wants to enjoy independently without Krishna, he is put into the material world, where he begins his life as Brahma and is gradually degraded to the status of an ant or a worm in a stool.
So see, the living entity, he begins his life as Brahma, which is why we said that all of us have been Brahma at least once in our journey in this material world. Now, we discussed how there are two sides of the coin, attachment and detachment. Attachment to Krishna and detachment from material activities. They are two sides of the coin. But which should we concentrate more on first? We discussed how Srila Prabhupada always focused on just chant Hare Krishna. So let's see from this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's read the translation.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Vijay. For one who is anxious to engage constantly in hearing such topics, Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifferences towards all other living things. Such constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna by the devotees who has achieved transcendental bliss vanquishes all his miseries without delay. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifference towards all other things. There are 9 items of devotional service, and these 9 items begins with Shravanam, begins with hearing. So when we hear Krishna Katha, then it will increase our indifference towards all other things, which means when we engage in devotional service, automatically detachment takes place as a byproduct. We don't have to individually endeavor to develop detachment. It automatically happens, which is why we focus on devotional service. We focus on Shravanam, Kirtanam, and the other items of devotional service, and detachment will take place automatically. And in fact, all his miseries are vanquished without delay. The word is asu. Asu means very quickly, very rapid. So all the miseries go away very quickly once one engages in devotional service. Now, how to because see, the banyan tree is called as the Ashwatha tree, but this Ashwatha has other meanings. So let's try to analyze this also. Let's read this.
The word Ashwatha can also be understood as follows. Swaha means Swa means tomorrow, and thus Ashwaha means not tomorrow to mean stay. Thus Ashwatham can be taken as that which will not exist tomorrow. The material world is Ashwatham, not existing tomorrow, both for devotees and the non-devotees. It doesn't exist tomorrow for the devotees because the devotees will become liberated tomorrow and attain the spiritual world. The tree doesn't exist tomorrow for the non-devotees because everything that they are attached to will cease to exist. Avyayam. The word avyayam also indicates that although the fruits of their attachment will cease to exist tomorrow, the non-devotee material existence is avyayam, everlasting. Hare Krishna.
So Ashwatam, the word Ashwata means that which will not exist tomorrow, and the material world will not exist both for the devotees and the non-devotees. Ashwa also means horse in Sanskrit. Let's read the text.
In Sanskrit, Ashwa also means horse. A horse often stands with 3 legs on the ground and 1 leg dangling. Similarly, the 3 solid standing legs of existence, Tripad Vibhuti, represents the spiritual world, while the dangling leg, the Ekapada Vibhuti, is the material world. Hare Krishna.
So the horse always stands with 3 legs firmly on the ground, and 1 leg of it is dangling. This one dangling leg represents the material world, which is 1/4 of the spiritual world. We discussed this when we discussed creation, right? So this is also the connection. Ashwatha tree, the meaning of the word Ashwatha, and Ashwa also means horse. So the one dangling leg represents the material world, and the 3 legs, 75%, represents the spiritual world. Okay, Krishna continues with this analogy. Let's see.
अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखा गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The branches of the tree extend towards downward, up and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the optics of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Hare Krishna.
So the branches represent the upper and lower planetary systems. Now, what kind of a body the jiva gets depends on which branch he is on. The higher branches represent the higher planetary systems. So there he will get the body of a demigod, or even higher than that, body of the great sages who are almost on the verge of liberation, right? In the middle planetary systems, he gets human bodies. Lower planetary systems, more animalistic. So the kind of body he gets depends on which branch he's on. The twigs are the objects of the senses. So this let us see over here. The twigs represent sense objects, and the tips of the branches represent senses. There are 5 senses: nose, tongue, skin, eyes, and ears. And there are 5 sense objects: smell, taste, touch, form, and sound. Just as how the tips of the branches are attached to the twigs, in the same way, the senses are attached to sense objects. The tongue is attached to tasting nice food stuff. So this is the analogy of the banyan tree that Krishna is giving. The fruits are dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which we already discussed. And this tree is nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. Nourishment we will read here in this slide. Let's read this.
Text 15.2 Material world is a tree nourished by 3 modes and fruitive acts. Different species manifest according to the proportions of modes. Purport. When less water, track in barren. When more water, track in green. In the lower part, there are vegetated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. Purport 15.2 Hare Krishna.
So how many different species of life are being manifested? That depends on how much we are watering the tree, how much they are under the modes of material nature. When the influence of the modes of material nature is greater, then accordingly the different species are being manifested. So see this picture here. It's you can see how you have the animals in the lower branches, human beings in the middle, and then you have the demigods on the higher branches. The great sages are there. The fruits, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. The leaves are the Vedic hymns. Pious acts takes one down, and impious acts one can go up. So you can see how this whole thing is very complex, very complicated, and if one is caught up in this, in the middle of this tree, it's not so easy to come out of it. So if we are caught up here, how are we going to come out of it? For that we need a weapon, right? We need an axe by which we are going to cut these thick branches. That's what Krishna is going to explain. How are we going to come out of this?
Pious acts, we are going to go up, no, Mataji?
Yeah, pious acts we go up. Did I say the reverse?
I guess so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so pious acts take us higher and impious acts take us lower. Here, impious acts taking us down and pious acts takes us up. Okay.
न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा ततः पदं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Where's the translation, Mataji?
Sorry.
The real form of the tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which having gone, one never returns, and there surrenders to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna is explaining how we can come out of this tree. To come out of this, we need a weapon, the weapon of detachment. Asanga shastrena, Krishna says. By the weapon of detachment, then we can come out of this strongly rooted tree. So see, Krishna says that the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it begins, where it ends. So it's very complex. We cannot understand. Very similar to what Krishna said previously when he explained karma. Krishna spoke about how karma is very complex. We cannot understand the law of karma. We cannot figure it out. So here, this also he says that you cannot perceive this, but we can cut it down. We can cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. So remember, detachment is what this chapter is going to be speaking about. So therefore,
And then
one must seek that place from which having gone, one never returns. So see, once we reach the spiritual realm, we don't come back again. That also Krishna is assuring us. He tells us that. So once we reach the spiritual world, we don't have to worry that, okay, we did sadhana, we worked hard, we controlled our senses, we went to the spiritual world. But now what if I come back again and have to redo the whole thing all over again? No. Once we go there, then we don't come back. And then Krishna says that there you surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. So he's talking about himself in the third person here. And we already know that Krishna already spoke about how everything is coming. Aham sarvasva prabhavo, Krishna said, everything is coming from him, how he is the seed giving father. Aham bija pradaha pita. So he says that once you reach there, you don't come back. But to reach there, what we have to do, we have to cut the roots with the weapon of detachment.
Mataji, and this weapon of detachment is Harinama.
Yeah, when we engage in devotional service, Harinam, which is the most important, chanting the holy name, automatically detachment happens as a byproduct. So when we take to devotional service, we should be prepared to give up also detachment. It happens also, but we should be prepared as well. Not that I'm chanting, but somewhere I still want to enjoy. I want to go discotheques and have a nice time, enjoy myself. So of course it happens simultaneously as a byproduct, but at the same time we should be prepared to let go also. Not that we are still holding on tight and in my mind I'm like, no, I don't want to let it go. It happens simultaneously, but at the same time we should be mentally prepared to allow it to happen. Let the transition go smooth like that. Let's read this.
Summarize theme, the banyan tree analogy, the material world, a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. A reflecting medium, original tree of spiritual world is reflected on desire, analogous to water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in the reflected material light. B roots. The real root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance from the topmost planet of the universe, Brahmaloka. The secondary roots are in the human planetary system, Bhuloka, and grow downward and spread in all directions. They are bound to the fruitive actions of human society, Subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. Tendency towards pity and impity are considered to develop from these secondary roots. Hare Krishna. Branches, upper and lower planets, leaves, Vedic hymns, twigs, sense objects, tips of branches, senses, fruits, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, nourishment, the three modes of material nature, the living entity's involvement in this tree, hoops from one branch to another trying to taste the fruit, can't see how far the tree extends or where it ends. Although living entities are the external, fragmental parts of Krishna, they are struggling with the senses. 15.7 Hare Krishna.
So let's
5.
say a person is tied up with this truck with a rope, and he, out of false ego, he is boasting and he says that, look, I am controlling this truck. But then the driver comes, he puts the key, he starts the engine, and now this person knows that he's going to be finished if he doesn't take action immediately, isn't it? So what does he have to do to free himself? He has to,
He needs detachment.
yes. So how is he going to detach himself from that truck?
Untie himself.
He has to cut the rope.
Untie.
Yeah,
The rope. Yeah,
just
untie.
yeah,
By
exactly.
disassociation of the three modes.
Yes, so he has to cut the rope so that
Mhm.
when the engine goes in the forward mode, he is not going to be dragged along with that truck. Yes, so like that, we have to detach ourselves with the acts of knowledge and detachment. So how to do that? By saintly association. There is a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's read the translation.
Do you want me to read the verse as well?
No, only the translation.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. In the association of pure devotees, discussions of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Hare Krishna.
So devotional service, as we discussed, there are 9 items. The first item is Shravanam and Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. So Shravanam is hearing. So this hearing, if it is in the association of pure devotees, then it becomes very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. See, Satam Prasangan. Satam Prasangan means to associate with pure devotees. In the association of pure devotees, what happens? Mama Virya Samvido. Krishna says, Mama means my. Virya Samvido. My wonderful activities are discussed. So when my wonderful activities are discussed in the association of pure devotees, then what happens? Bhavanti Rit Karna. Rit means heart. Karna means hearing. So it is Rasayana. Rasayana means it is very, very pleasing. So it is very pleasing to the heart and to the ears. And by cultivating such knowledge, then one comes to the path of liberation. Then one starts to engage in devotional service. To engage in devotional service, before that, what we need devotee association. Somebody has to teach us, somebody has to tell us, somebody has to inspire us. Okay, please engage in devotional service. Yes, so when we have devotee association, then in the association of devotees, we hear from them and then we engage in devotional service. So that's how we can cut the rope with the acts of knowledge and detachment. That knowledge we get when we associate with devotees. So we'll stop here. We'll continue in the next class. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Yeah.
1 second.